Good morning, my listeners. This is Wiktor Doctor, and this is Good Morning BSS World, another episode where we talk about the business support services industry and the market which is located all around this business. Today, I have a pleasure to host a guest. My guest is Iwona Chojnowska Haponik, who is Business Consulting Director at JLL. Hello, Iwona.
Hello, very good afternoon everyone. Thanks, Wiktor, for inviting me to this webinar, and I'm very happy to share my insights about this sector and its development in the future.
I think we can share here some, let's say, secrets of our friendship, which lasts for already nearly 2 decades, most probably, because Iwona was some time ago working for Invest in Poland agency, but since few years is standing on the front of the very important department in JLL. JLL is a real estate agency who also supports foreign investors to set up their businesses globally. But Iwona is focusing very much on Europe and on Poland.
Absolutely, this is the main focus of my team, and we cover 2 aspects actually. So, advising investors where to locate their new businesses, be it manufacturing, but in very most cases, business services type of operations across EMEA. And secure and help them understand also what incentives are available in every single country and how to get them easily and in a smooth way.
So we already know that you are covering the whole EMEA region, but today we will focus very much on Poland. And one of the reasons of that is that you, as JLL, are the author of a very interesting report. I have it in front of me. The title is Onshore, Nearshore, Offshore, Unsure, with the question mark at the very end. And this one was recently released, focusing very much on Poland, on the Polish perspective. So we will go through that. And one of the first sentences in this report is that Poland is the hub for business process outsourcing. Why do you think so?
Well, it's obvious. If you have a look at the numbers, just focusing on the CEE countries, out of 490,000 employees of this sector, majority are located in Poland. 355,000 people work for this industry, and more than 1,000 centers are located here. So without doubt, we can say that Poland is by far the largest and the strongest place to open and grow business services operations.
Okay, we are in the middle of pandemic, so I don't know if in the middle, but some time within the pandemic times. And this question has to be asked in here. How much did it change within the last 1 or 2 years already when we have the pandemic next to us? Did Poland lost some kind of its attractiveness for the business services, or this is still kept on the high level?
Well, as you could see, the report, the title of the report finishes with a question mark and the word unsure. So obviously, when we were working on the report and preparing it, we were wondering what is next for Poland and for the whole region. Whether this splendid growth, double-digit growth in terms of both revenues and the number of job places created annually will be sustainable, or whether companies will rethink their strategy and focus maybe on onshore operations, so closer to home, or returning some of their operations from India, from Poland, from any other countries. Well, after a year and a half, I can say that Poland did not lose because of COVID-19. On the contrary, we see a steady flow of foreign direct investment into the country in various segments of this particular industry, which obviously is a sign that Poland did not lose its attractiveness. On the contrary, I believe that we benefited from some of the trends that started to bloom during COVID times and right now are, sustainable, and we believe that they will stay with us for longer.
Okay, thank you for that. And so maybe let's now take a look on the business environment where the BSS sector is nowadays in Poland? What are the main elements which we can consider to be, let's say, very helpful, very useful for the industry, for the growth?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the set of criteria remains very much the same as it used to be for the location, selection of location, of ideal location. So in the first place, companies look at the overall business environment, economic stability of a given country, and political stability. So they take into account the policies in place, ease of doing business, the reliability of the legal framework. All those aspects are the very first elements that play a huge role. And here Poland looks like really a safe haven for all the companies that are trying to find a resilient country that offers very stable economic environment. Obviously, after a downturn of last year, Poland bounced back with a splendid growth, and is again one of the countries that will grow in the future at the highest pace in the whole EU, at around 4 to 5% per year, which is really very promising. And the drivers of this growth are multiple, not only export growth, but also internal consumption, but also investment. And both, again, domestic and foreign. So we see a steady flow of investors coming into the country, but we also see Polish companies being more and more active in investing in the country. What worries companies right now is definitely the inflation rate that is at a steady rise. But I believe that this should be, somehow flattened in the coming months, and this is the expectations of experts from international economists. So no worries here. Other than that, I believe that there are no questions or doubts that Poland will grow at the very same pace as the country used to do in the past years. So this is number one, first chapter that is very much in favor of Poland. I guess that the size of the country is always considered as a very big asset. 38 million of inhabitants, 17,000 of working population is a promise that you will find employees. And if we add on the top of it the fact that 1.2 million students are at present in Polish universities scattered across the country, not only in one location, but in several locations that are strong academic hubs, and over 300,000 graduates every year. It is a confirmation and a guarantee that you will find here skills, not only multiple employees, but also very good skills in languages, in technology, in IT, in finance and accounting, you name it. So all segments of business service sector can grow very easily with the flow and the quality of the labor force that we face here. And labor force is definitely in the middle of all discussions with clients, because especially if we talk about the IT field, we sense and we feel that the companies are worried about availability of labor force. And the fact that Poland not only releases to the labor market skilled people every year from universities, but also the fact that we have already established operations of business services that can also be a labor pool for potential newcomers. But also, if we add on the top of it the inflow of foreign citizens into the country from Ukraine, from Belarus, but also from Western countries, because Poland became beautiful and attractive to potential employees from Western Europe. So there is no surprise that you will find growing communities of people from Italy, Spain, Portugal, even France, you name it. This is why I believe that this offer that Poland's put on the table is so attractive. And last but not least, I'm trying to cover every single aspect, including also maybe real estate as a next step. Flexibility. This is the number one word when we talk about real estate nowadays. For one, because still majority of us do work from home. For two, because we believe that in the future there will be hybrid kind of work, right? Some people will stay in the office, others will work from home. How it will look like 2 to 3 days for home and office work, nobody knows. But offices will stay with us, that's for sure. This is a mingling point, a place where people create ideas. So I don't think that offices will disappear. Other models will have to be implemented. Office is also one of the ways of attracting labor force. Hence, the supply of modern office space, flexible office space, is definitely yet another aspect of Poland being ahead of all other countries from the region. All right, so I did not give you the opportunity to chip in, so sorry for that, but you know me, I'm a chatterbox as usual. Another aspect, but I guess that we will elaborate on that even more broadly, are investment incentives available in the country.
Yeah, we will come back to that in a second.
Just to flag that it is also one of the aspects why Poland is very attractive. And last but not least, and let me stress it very, very strongly, Poland has a lot of potential locations. It's unlike in the neighboring countries where you had maximum 3 locations able to host large business services centers. Poland is a country with, if I remember correctly, 42 cities with a number of inhabitants exceeding 100,000. So almost all of those cities would be able to attract investors, provided there is a university or it is a hub for students. This is why we divided the most hot locations into 3 groups. First being tier 1, obviously Warsaw, Krakow, and Wrocław, very established markets, very mature, but a little bit overheated. Then we have this tier 2 that covers more than 7 cities that are already well renowned and able to, show the successes in attracting a lot of very nice companies in various fields of business services, and then newcomers, untapped potential, especially from a human resources perspective, that are there, like Białystok, like Opole, many other locations that are being discovered by companies. Maybe not the newcomers to the country, and this is something that we have to be blunt about, but the ones that are already present in Poland are not really afraid to go outside of those established locations and look for opportunities where it is available.
Yeah, sometimes discovered, sometimes undiscovered still. Yeah. I think it's worth to mention here that historically Poland had over 40 voivodeships, or let's say subregions. And in each of those subregions, in each of the city, which was the heart of that subregion, there was an education institution like a university or a technical university, which was quite well administrated, and it was well connected to other cities of a certain size. And that within the last, let's say, 30 years of our history, let's say modern history, has of course evolved and changed. So we have now 16 voivodeships, but anyway, still those cities remained. They are still in place. They still are a big, let's say, education hubs, and still a number of different industries grow their business over there. Nevertheless, it shows us now that the situation that you mentioned about those first tiers, like tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and they are the most, let's say, recognizable. Yeah, so this is something what we can see in various reports, in talks, in TV, blah blah. But now, that's my observation, at least, that we are now talking about cities who are below that tier 3, tier 4. Especially this hybrid model of work created that. Yeah, so now we are looking for talent pool who is not in those big cities, but in a little bit smaller ones, and still becomes a very attractive value for the new investments.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. And we hear companies asking about those locations. As I said, mostly the ones that are already present, that know how the business goes in Poland, that it is a fully blown country for investors with a very, I would say, predictable business environment, mature business services environment, etc., etc. So they know how it works, and they are willing to give it a try and go and look elsewhere. Sometimes it's incentives driven, but in most cases it is, I would say, boosted by availability of workforce. The companies recognize that there are higher education institutions located in those smaller cities, smaller academic centers, that release not only well-educated people, because the level is quite high, but also much more loyal. And some companies really do appreciate, with the attrition rate ranging from 10 to even 30%, if we are talking about BPO type of companies, to keep the workplace that was already trained and ready-made is crucial. So definitely, this is one of the aspects that is also underlined by companies we are talking to.
Yeah, definitely. You already mentioned twice about those incentives. So let's move into that area. Of course, when the foreign investor is considering to set up an office in some countries, they are looking how to get there, if there is a talent pool, but of course, if there are some plans which can support, either from financial or from operational perspective, the huge fast start of the business in this destination. So let's focus on the grants and incentives. What does Poland have to in its, let's say, portfolio, which can be used by foreign investors?
Absolutely. State aid regulations, as you know, are very strict within the European Union. So you cannot grant as much support as you want. There are limitations, and there are limits imposed on regions. So it's not like Poland is covered with intensity of state aid of 50%. No, we are talking rather about provinces, so voivodeships, and once we know which province is of preference to the company, then we can determine how much or what would be the state aid credit that the company can count on. Let's assume that our investor wants to go to Lublin, where the intensity is the highest, because this is Eastern Poland, and the intensity depends very much on the GDP per capita, compared with the GDP per capita, average GDP per capita in the EU. So hence, it is one of the poorest regions. This means that the intensity of aid, the maximum that can be granted, is the highest. So let's assume that 2-year labor cost of such a center will be 10 million Polish zlotys. The company can count on 5 million Polish zlotys back using different forms. This is really impressive. And if you look at the state aid intensity map across Europe, Poland is eligible to the highest possible levels of support. Once again, because of still catching up with the rest of Europe. So for one, we know that the max is really appealing. For two, there are instruments to use up till the maximum level that is available to a company. So this 10 million, there's 5 million out of 10, we can use applying in the first place the most lucrative and interesting for companies type of instruments of state aid, which are grants. And here we are talking about two types of grants: for employment and or for training. And we can complete the remaining part with corporate income tax exemption in so-called Polish investment zone that covers the whole Poland. Why is it important to underline it? Because a couple of years back, only the business services companies could benefit from corporate income tax exemption only and exclusively in locations that were covered with a very special status of special economic zone. Right now, the whole Poland is a special economic zone, which gives us great opportunities. And companies start to, especially from business services, because for manufacturing companies, it was no-brainer. Almost all the companies that came to Poland wanted to be set in special economic zone. And if they could find a location that was, let's say, granted to them. For business services, office space in large Polish cities covered with the status was not really available. So right now, bearing in mind that it is an option that applies to every single location across Poland, companies start to appreciate that instrument and apply for support. In recent years, Poland upgraded the incentive system significantly, probably benchmarking the country to other main competitors of Poland in the race for investment, but also taking into account what investors were sharing with Polish authorities. I remember back in time when I worked for the agency, companies were saying, okay, we don't really want an investment grant, we don't need that. But we would like to train our people and have it recognized somehow by the authorities by supporting at least partially the cost of training. And there is no surprise that the government introduced this possibility of training grants, and it is very much appreciated. Another important step towards, let's say, encouraging companies to come to Poland was the recent changes introduced to the government grant program that took place back in March of the current year and will be enforced till the very end of the current year, was the fact of reducing the entry criteria for companies so they could meet easier the requirements regarding number of heads and investment expenditures, plus additional bonus for companies locating in not obvious locations, so those rising stars, as we call them, and increased the support significantly for this type of investment in those particular locations. So this is a very big step forward. We hope that these preferential regulations and entry criteria will stay with us for longer, because it's not only the COVID times that require special treatment and special regulations. We know that Poland is competing with many other very attractive locations, not only in the CEE, because as you know, we are not really competing with the small pond that we are in. On the contrary, in our location strategies that we prepare for companies, very often Europe, the whole Europe competes with LATAM or even with India. Obviously, it's very hard to compare those markets. Still, at the end of the day, every single aspect matters: economic, political, incentives, people, reliability, etc., etc. So we are comparing rather cities than countries. And here we talk about Warsaw or Krakow or Prague or Lisbon, etc., etc. Santiago, this is one that's popped up in our research only recently as a very, very attractive investment destination for business services. So we must be aware of the fact that there are other rising stars globally that could potentially, be a very significant competitor to our countries. Hence, if we keep this, I would say, cherry on the cake as attractive as possible, it's definitely a big asset and a big bonus for companies.
I would add to that list of the destinations which you mentioned also Africa, especially Egypt and South Africa. Yeah, those are very let's say, dynamic destinations where especially IT and call contact center processes are being developed. I remember I had a call like a month ago with one of the friends from Colombia. And Colombia becomes a very, very attractive outsourcing destination. And still I have in my head that there are over 600,000 people employed in Colombian BPO industry. So those numbers are really, really big, but the country is also quite big and specialized not only in English, but also in Spanish, which is a natural support for the USA, for example, clients who are still looking for the new destinations of their business activities. Okay, let's come back to Poland. So another question. We have here those very well recognized destinations like those big cities from tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. Is it rather a role of, for example, you as JLL agency to inform about the potential other destinations which are in tier 3, 4, and so on? Or this is somehow already mentioned by the investors? Okay, we know the big cities. What are the others? How does it work?
To be very candid with you, I never ever came across an investor from the US that does not have a presence in Europe that would point out to a smaller location than Krakow, Warsaw, or Wrocław. Really, truly. It happens very, very rarely. Or it does not happen at all, unless someone used to live in Poland or knows Poland. So this is mainly the case. Other than that, what companies do see are reports that cover, in most cases, 2 cities in each of the countries of the region, which obviously comes down to the most popular destinations. This is why, yes, companies that are involved in advisory companies where to come needs to educate them and explain that not only tier 1 and tier 2 type of cities are available, but there are also other opportunities. And we try to do that. There are companies that are willing to take the risk to some extent, mostly IT companies. Others are not that flexible, and they would like to have a safe bet. And obviously, then they either go to the tier 1 or they stick to tier 1, tier 2 destinations because it's easier for them. Moreover, sometimes from the prestige point of view, they prefer or they have to be located in those largest cities because their clients can come down, because they believe that attracting expats to work for them will be much easier. But there are companies that understand the potential of smaller locations or do have some smaller presence, for example, in the US, and they are quite comfy with it. They see the advantages, and then they say, okay, please show me what you have in the store, and we will consider.
Yeah, and I think the good thing in your report, for example, is that somewhere in the second part of the report, you present a map.
Yeah.
Where on this map there are those bigger, middle-sized, and even smaller cities mentioned. So this is absolutely a good element to get more familiar with how Poland is organized from the, let's say, administrative perspective and what is the potential of each of the cities. Iwona, JLL is an agency from the real estate industry. Of course, there are various elements which you are focusing on, but this one, which I am in the most interest in, are the offices. What are the, let's say, the biggest office markets in Poland? Because, okay, we can talk about Poland as an attractive destination as such. We can mention that we've got bigger, middle-sized, and smaller cities, but there are differences between them. So which cities are now, let's say, with the biggest pool of available attractive office spaces for the investors who are representing BPO, GBSs, or R&D companies?
All the markets, to be very candid. Obviously, Warsaw is by far the largest. with over 5 million square meters, it's a behemoth, right? So definitely, if you're looking for opportunities, it's Warsaw, especially that you have those rings. You have the core with prime location, but you also have smaller rings when the rates go down, and the availability is much bigger. But after a period when Krakow was struggling to provide modern office space, the city upgraded its offer, and I'm absolutely positive that you can find a decent location everywhere across Krakow. It is the very same for all other locations in Poland, and the market is growing insanely. Companies do see the potential, and they are willing to invest even speculatively just to have the offer when a big investor comes. The smaller cities, in the smaller cities, the situation is not that I don't want to say perfect, but still requires a lot of advertisement, a lot of cooperation between authorities, developers, and other institutions promoting investment in Poland, just to keep up with the requirements and the trends on the market. So from that standpoint, compared with some of the locations like Lisbon, for example, Poland is definitely one of the strongest candidates, from the strongest competitors.
Okay. We are getting to the end of our call today, but I have, let's say, one thing which I would like to work with you, some tips and hints. Let's assume that I am the investor who wants to set up in Poland. I already know it's Poland. So I already made that decision that this is Poland where I want to go. And I want to set up an office for 100 people. And this is a GBS of a finance and accounting profile. What should I do?
Well, ideally, talk to us because we can give you the intelligence, all the aspects that are very much required to make an informed investment decision. But truth is that you have to do the homework. So learn about availability of cities, about very, very precise numbers regarding students, graduates, business environment, but also business services companies operating on the market, some specialities like language, for example. What languages are available in every single city? What coding languages are available? It does not mean that we have a very narrow specialization from that standpoint, but still there are more Java developers in one locations and other languages are popular in others. So you need to be aware of that. Plus, obviously, local authorities that can, in the first place, help you in the very first steps on the local market are important. Incentives, obviously, you can get more in some places, you can get less in some places. So as you can see, there is a lot of aspects that should be taken into account before diving and before deciding about this or that location. Even though I'm absolutely optimistic that any large Polish city can host a GBS of 100 people without real difficulty.
Having in mind that we already have, let's say, hundreds of such investments all around Poland, so it's quite easy even to look for the resources who are already experienced with this type of work. So not necessarily taking a fresh meat, as we call it, from the universities, but we can get already an experienced team coming from some other companies who already run their business in a certain destination. Iwona, I must say that there were a lot of valuable things which you mentioned today within our talk, but I can imagine that there might be people who would like to get more and more and more. So I am very happy actually to direct them to you. So how to reach you?
Well, I'm easy to find in the first place. I am the face of the report to some extent. You will find me on the second and third page. And I guess that you will also find my contact details there. And please don't hesitate to reach out to either JLL or me directly. I'll be happy to help. I'll be happy to share with you my experience and what I know. What are the trends? We did not cover that, unfortunately, but there are visible trends that developed during COVID times and are with us right now. But maybe this is for another time. So I guess that it will be easy. They can always start by contacting you, and you can redirect them to me. But I guess it won't be very difficult to find you.
I'm sure people can also find you on LinkedIn.
Of course, I am available on LinkedIn.
So I will make sure that I will put some links to the description of of this episode of the Good Morning BSS World podcast, where I will direct people, first of all, to the report, which we were talking about, but also to your profile on LinkedIn. So you may expect some talks from some people who are the listeners of this podcast.
That will be great, really. I'm looking forward to meeting with everyone and responding to any questions that you may have.
Iwona, it was a pleasure, as usual. So thank you very much for today.
Thank you. Bye-bye.